The death toll from a massive bombing in the Iraqi capital has risen towards 250, making it the deadliest since the US invasion of Iraq in 2003. The Iraqi government is struggling to deal with the latest spate of attacks. Overnight, its interior minister has resigned, claiming there's disorder in the government's security agencies. And Barker reports.
The end of Ramadan is meant to be a festive time as Muslims end a month of fasting. But in Baghdad's upmarket suburb Karada, scores of grief-stricken families are mourning the dead from Sunday's bombing, which demolished much of the street. The attack by Islamic State militants is one of the worst in Baghdad in more than a decade of war and insurgency. Some reports put the death toll in Karada around 250, and rescue teams are still digging through rubble, searching for more people who are missing. Despite the scale of the atrocity, Iraqis return to the streets in defiance to prepare for the Eid festival marking the end of Ramadan. We pay no heed to the explosions. We defy terrorism, says one resident. I come for the shopping. We come and we want to send a message to terrorists that we don't care for such violence. Iraq is the cradle of civilization. It's a country of peace, says another resident. God willing, we'll eliminate terrorists. We're people who love life and we want peace. The attitude towards Iraqi authorities was far more strident. The Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi faced angry mobs when he visited the bomb site on Monday. Iraqis are critical of his government for not doing more to protect them from terrorism. What more the government can do, though, is questionable. In the days since the bombing, the Prime Minister has announced only minor measures, including a decision to abandon the use of bomb detection wands, which the US has long said are worthless. Now, Iraq's Interior Minister has resigned, complaining of disorder in the country's security agencies. Mohammed Gaban says forces outside his control who report to different commands conflict with his own counterintelligence units. And he says attacks by Islamic State won't end until the dysfunction is fixed. We're not fighting in a regular war where there's an enemy in front of us or having organised troops controlled by one command, he says. But there is ISIS inside the city and sometimes the civilians are fighting with ISIS. Differentiating them is a challenge which is not easy. The US says it's not surprised ISIS has been able to strike in Iraq as it has in recent weeks. US Defence Press Secretary Peter Cook says the best way to defeat Islamic State is still to attack it at its core in Iraq and Syria.
Tightening the noose around ISIL in Iraq will make it harder for them to carry out attacks in places like Baghdad, in places in other parts of the world. And this was clearly a devastating attack and a painful reminder of the lethal capabilities of ISIL. But it does not alter the strategy here, and that is to go after ISIL in Iraq, in Syria, at an accelerated pace, as aggressively as possible, to try and limit their capabilities, their ability to carry out those kinds of attacks.
Despite the latest carnage, the US says ISIS is weaker. It's lost many of its leaders, and its propaganda message is no longer received as well as it was.
And Barker.